It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now, right here, right now. Well, we got a couple of issues we're going to run over this morning I think you guys are going to find interesting. Not the least of which is a story about General Vallely, who has come out with a concept that I think you folks might find of value. He's pushing for a no-confidence vote, and we're going to discuss that a little bit in our first topic this morning. I don't want to get into all the details now. We'll cover it in a moment, but I think it's important that we look at all of the available avenues to us that will enable us to restore some semblance of the rule of law in our nation. I mean, as we sit today, we have a nation which is so far out of control and so far beyond the scope of what the vast majority of America would believe was our intended purpose as a nation and as a government. And so there are a lot of ideas out there. I mean, we hear about, constitutional amendments through the Article 5 process. We hear about major civil disobedient proposals. We hear about things like this no confidence vote. I think that, we need to explore and look at each one of them so that as we move forward, we have a good understanding of what they are, how they can have an impact. And quite honestly, I don't think there is one magic bullet, if you will, that will resolve the whole problem, literally and or figuratively, by the way. I don't think there is some sort of a, single solution to the problem. It's taken us a long time to get here, folks. And I think that as we move forward, we're going to see that there is no easy, quick answers here. So our second topic is going to be Iran and nukes and the issue of the nuclear proliferation problem that is occurring now in Iran and, of course, will spread across the Middle East. And then in relation to that, the Obamacare legacy. Now, Obama and Kerry are desperate to build a lasting legacy. And when I look at that type of thinking, my problem with that is that, these people are so desperate to accomplish that and to leave something behind in the history books for which they'll be remembered, that they're willing to sacrifice freedom, liberty, perhaps millions upon millions of lives by bringing us to the brink of a nuclear war. And I can't think of a worse behavior that's self-serving, self-aggrandizing than that. I mean, what would possess an individual to willingly place the nation at danger for the purposes of being able to state, this is my lasting legacy. I delivered some short-term, unremembered peace. I mean, it's ridiculous. And frankly, I'm tired of people who tyrannically believe that their legacy is more important than the survival, frankly, of the planet. Our third topic is going to be the U.S. and Mexico Union, the North American Union. Now, a lot of you have heard over the years a lot of discussion about the North American Union. And, for a time there, they were poo-pooing this as something that was a joke and, there was no intention for that. Well, with all due respect, I posted an article that I had found out back in 2011 about how WikiLeaks had confirmed the North American Union integration scheme. And so this is not something new. They released a cable in 2011 that was from back in 2005 that confirmed that what the North American, or the New American, excuse me, and other reporters had been producing for years about this North American Union was indeed actually happening. We're going to talk a little bit about that, because this ties into the not only NAFTA and CAFTA, but also the TPP and the TTIP, and also the generalized concept of the North American Union. And then our fourth and final topic this morning is going to be Obamacare, and the laughingly, well, I shouldn't say laughingly, because it really isn't funny. I mean, the simple truth is that we are, there's an article out about how a guy broke into the Obamacare system, and literally, ladies and gentlemen, within 4 minutes now, he was able to gain access to 70,000 complete records. Wow. I mean, 70,000, and he said he stopped because he could have gotten them all, but he had proved his point. I mean, wow. When you think about the fact that you have been legally mandated to sign up for that, and the risk that you are posing not only to yourself, but to your family, because you're exposing yourself to fraud, you're exposing yourself to identity theft, and perhaps more importantly, the government will use the information you submit against you. And when you weigh it all in the balance, I'm really not sure which one is worse. Okay, we're going to break into our first story. Before we get there, if you'd like to write our listen line down, make sure that you write this or jot this number down, because this enables you to listen to America's Voice Now 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime, anywhere, any place. You can simply dial a number. It's 415-325-0725. That will enable you to listen to a recorded version of America's Voice Now for that entire 24-hour period. And the idea behind it is that it gives you an opportunity, even if you're not available on a computer or you're not within one of our terrestrial broadcast footprints, that you can still listen to America's Voice Now. It's also a great way for you to give our program out to other people. Simply text them the number or email them the number or give it to them verbally and say, hey, here's a radio show you might be interested in. If you call in during the course of the actual live program in the morning, you'll hear it live. But if you call in after that, you simply begin the program right at its very start, and you can run and listen to the entire thing. So this is a service provided to us by Audio Now, and you can find them by going to audionow.com if you have an interest in producing this service for your own radio program. But it is an excellent service. I'm very, very pleased that they've provided that for us. And please make sure that you write that number down. It's 415-325-0725. It works from any phone, whether that be your NSA-sponsored personal tracking device. And, if you've got unlimited minutes on your personal tracking device, then, it doesn't cost you a penny. You can call it from home as well if you have unlimited long distance as well from there. I'm sorry, but I am still fighting this loss of voice, and I suspect I probably will for another week or so. In addition to that, make sure that if you're interested in calling into the program during the live portion, you can. I'll give you this number and write it down. It's 417-204-5141. It's 417-204-5141. During the live portion of the show in the morning, if you want to give us your input or your comments or your opinions or ideas, we'd love to hear them. You can simply dial that number. We put in a new phone system to make it easier. And you can call into that number, and we'll bring your call on the air. We don't have fancy call screeners and all that. I just kind of bring you on the air and let you have your say. Okay, make sure that while you're out and about, you visit our friends over at the law offices of Jason Henry. He is an attorney here in West Plains in Missouri, and he handles both state and federal cases related to criminal issues, family law, custody law, as well as personal injury for automobile accidents and the like. If you have a criminal issue that you need to deal with or any of those other issues, by all means, There are times when we need a lawyer in our lives, and I know Jason on a personal level, and I've experienced his work. He's done work for me, and he's done a very fine job. You can call him at 417-256-4100. It's 417-256-4100. While you're there, you can visit our friends over at the Patriot Cigar Bar, cigar and tobacco shop. They're located right on the square in West Plains. Their phone number is 417-257-1776. That's 417-257-1776. Now, you can find them on Facebook as well by going to facebook.com/Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. While you're there, you can visit Wits End Classic Barbershop and get yourself a great haircut. $10 for a haircut. They also do the old style hot towel and straight razor lather shave. Treat yourself or your guy to a really old-fashioned style shave and a haircut. You won't be disappointed. Make sure that you visit our friends over at Battery Station. You can reach them by going to batterystation.com. You can also call them at 417-257-7799 if you have any questions about any of their services, and they do ship nationwide. And our friends, of course, over at Pizza Hut, they really offer a great lunch buffet, which is salad and a pizza bar. There's pasta on there as well, and that's every day from 11 to 2. And then on Tuesday night, family night, kids eat free under 12. And make sure that when you go to visit any of our sponsors, you make sure as you're telling them, or as you're patronizing their establishment, you tell them you heard about it on America's Voice Now. Okay, so Major General Paul Vallely, he is the chairman of Stand Up America, and he has come out in the forefront of these programs and calls for a restoration of American lawfulness through the Constitution. Now, I did an interview, for full disclosure, I did an interview with General Vallely last week, and we're going to probably have that posted up over the course of before the weekend, I believe. So you'll have an opportunity to actually hear the man in his own words talk about this program. We actually covered quite a bit of ground, and I was impressed with his grasp of the issues, and so he's leading a call for a House-led parliamentary-style vote of no confidence in the Obama administration. Now, those constitutional individuals or constitutionally minded individuals will say, well, wait a minute, there's no constitutional authorization for something like that. That's more like a parliamentary type event that occurs over in Europe, as an example. Or you hear about it in Israel quite often. They have different factions, and they do these no confidence votes, and then the multiple factions get together and haggle back and forth and reestablish these coalitions that form a government. He admits that there is no constitutional authorization for that. However, he is working with some individuals within the House who will remain unnamed until they unveil this thing in its fullness. And the reason for that is because he's seeking to have a no confidence resolution that would be drafted in the House. Now, his statement is, I have already achieved a level of no confidence in Obama as a leader. In other words, he's saying that personally. But now I urge you to examine this concept. If you agree with me that all confidence is lost, I urge you to then ask yourself, what is in the realm of the possible? I implore you to push aside the urge to try and fix everything in one fell swoop. Now is the time for something a dear friend calls conviction without eviction, an end that can be brought on through a vote of no confidence, locally, statewide, and nationally. This is just a first step in what can only be repaired over time, but it is achievable in the short term, and it starts to remove Obama's ability to continue his ruinous ways right now. Now, he's going to be expanding and expounding on this idea at a South Carolina Tea Party convention, which is scheduled to occur. It's actually occurring has already occurred. And so the event has been live streamed, and basically the idea is that Congress would put forth a resolution that would enable a no-confidence vote to be declared. Now, a no-confidence vote would essentially eviscerate the basis for the president to continue to use things like executive orders and to make unilateral decisions that are outside of his constitutionally authorized role as commander-in-chief. And essentially, he explains the reasoning by this. First, in most of the world's so-called democracies, actually multi-party constitutional republics, a formal vote of no confidence by a lower house suspends or greatly limits the governing authority of the party in power, and in a, quote, recall of sorts, mandates that new elections be held within a 30 or 60-day window. Although we have no such instrument in our Constitution or in existing law, there is nothing to prevent its use as a comprehensive de facto indictment and conviction for contempt of Congress, violations of the oath of office, and of the Constitution itself, for all of the reasons stated in such a resolution. Secondarily, he claims, it would be much easier to co-sponsor than a series of impeachment articles to be formally adopted by the House and to achieve what might be called Obama's, quote, conviction without eviction, in which a wholesale repudiation by the House and a loss of control of the Senate and a substantial diminution of power and influence during his remaining time in office would be the penalties. Well, I invite you to capture and listen to or watch the interview that I accomplished with General Vallely. I will make sure that I post it today or tomorrow so that you have an opportunity to hear in his own words what the plan entails. In addition to that, I invite you to seriously consider it. And if you are a member of an organization that, participates or reviews, and looks for methodologies where we can rein the federal government back in, and our state governments for that matter, then I encourage you to have an open dialogue and discussion with other constitutionalists who would give you an opportunity to voice this issue out there, get feedback, expound on it, look at it not only in the element of how can it work on a federal level, but I would invite you to look at whether or not this might be something that we could use on a state level. As an example, here in my own state of Missouri, we have a governor, Governor Jay Nixon, who is, for all intents and purposes, acting like a mini-me to President Obama. He has made declaratory judgments and rulings. He is utilizing executive power to initiate the use of the National Guard for law enforcement purposes in our state. He has violated the law over and over repeatedly with things like the implementation of Real ID, even though Missouri has a state law that prohibits the implementation of Real ID in writing and on the books. And he's blatantly ignored it. In fact, at one point I posted an article on americasvoicenow.org where I showed the proof where we had a letter from 2010 stating that Janet Napolitano was thanking him for his implementation work on Real ID when the law was passed in 2009. So we have the same problem in our state that we have on a federal level. We have a chief executive officer who, for all intents and purposes, feels that he has the right and the ability and the wherewithal to go out there and make unilateral decisions, pose unconstitutional decisions that he feels he has the right to make. And honestly, our House and our Senate feel in some ways powerless to stop him. I would encourage every state assembly who's in a situation similar to Missouri to take a serious look at the no confidence concept, because in this state we don't really have recall ability, not like they do in Colorado. And impeachment is probably not an option for us here, just like it's not an option in the federal side for this very same reasons. And so there has to be some other mechanism. And listen, I'm all for the idea of, looking seriously at the Convention of the States, the pact concept I've put forth, and many, many other solutions. But in the meantime, we've got to stop the bleeding. I mean, this is like a triage decision, right? We must stop the bleeding now. I mean, I've heard arguments on the Article 5 convention concept, and they make great sense to me, and I have concerns, but one of the aspects of that is that it will take years before we get a constitutional amendment, one drafted, put before the electorate, voted upon, get the states to vote upon it, and that's assuming that we don't have legal issues with Congress. Well, with all due respect, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have years. And I'm not throwing the idea under the bus. I'm just saying that all of these ideas should be followed in a unified front so that we're attacking the enemy on all fronts. We're hitting their flank, we're hitting them on a frontal assault, and we're not just sitting here assuming that one solution is going to be the magic bullet, if you will. I got to tell you, we're in such a constitutional crisis right now that those of you who are in the know, those of you who pay attention to these things, those of you who are watching and listening every day to what's being done in our nation, you already know how dangerous this has become. The media is refusing to educate the American people about the danger we're in. And so it's up to us as the alternative media and just as just plain Jane individuals who have a small circle of influence, whether that's just your own family or a small group at your church or at work, or maybe you're a pastor, or maybe you're a lay pastor, or maybe you're a member of a Veterans of Foreign Wars location or something along those lines. If I can help you by coming out there to speak at one of your events and helping to try to coalesce and catalyze some sort of an effort to drive grassroots activism, please feel free to contact me. You can do so by writing to me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can also call a hotline number where you can leave messages. I don't take that number on a routine basis, but you can certainly call and leave voice messages if you don't have internet access. That number is 417-204-5130. That's the main hotline to America's Voice Now. It's 417-204-5130. Or you can just simply email me to mike@americasvoicenow.org. Folks, we're in a crisis, and it's time we recognized it and then began to take immediate, evasive action, because I don't think we have a whole lot of time left between the pressure we see coming down from unlawful actions on the part of our government to the pressure we see building under things like the economy and the potential implosion of world currency issues, the enormous debt that's not only in the United States but every other nation as well. We hear the IMF talking about, it's a great idea to start skimming savings accounts to pay off government debts and crazy nonsense like that. Listen, folks, we've got to do something, and we've got to do it now. And we need to attack this enemy from every potential side. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to talk about Iran, nukes, and the Obamacare legacy that is threatening the peace and security, not only of the United States, but the entire world. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Find us live every day on americasvoicenow.org. We'll be right back. All right. Thanks for riding with us. I did an article the other day about, before we get into this topic with Iran, nukes, and the Obamacare legacy that threatens the safety and security of the entire planet. I did an article the other day, or a segment on Kelly Thomas, the young homeless guy who was murdered in California. And this morning on Patriot FB, which is a hangout for me and America's Voice Now, and where we stream our show live every morning on patriotfb.com, there was a poster put up that was part of the trial where these two cops were tried for murder and, believe it or not, were exonerated and found acquitted of the crime of murder, which is deplorable. I mean, if you watch the video, which I posted in full, there's just no way this was not murder. And I'm going to try to bring on a guest next week who was actually involved in some of the protests out there on a personal level to help clarify some of the issues that were and the legacy issues that are going on, because the local community in Fullerton, California, is extraordinarily upset about the fact that these police officers got off scot-free. But there's a poster up on Patriot FB this morning that during the course of the video you can hear the guy just begging and pleading for help before they suffocated him, and they actually killed him. And after they beat his face to a bloody pulp with a taser. And on this image, they show a guy standing in a suit holding this thing up. I'm sure it was used during the trial. And during the course of this 15 minutes that it took him to murder this guy, you can hear him crying over and over and over again a number of things that he's repeating. And he says, Dad, please help me. They're killing me. Sir, please, sir, okay. And help me, God, and I'm sorry. Now the Daddy, please help me, they're killing me. He said that 31 times during the 15 minutes that they took to murder this man. Sir, please, okay. And I heard him say also, I'm trying, because they kept telling him, get your arms behind your back. 6 thugs. 6 full-grown, beefy men on a 160-year-old kid. He said, sir, please, okay, 30 separate times. Help me, God. 26 separate times. I'm sorry. 15 separate times. Ladies and gentlemen, what these police did to him in the Fullerton Police Department in Fullerton, California, was murder. It was nothing less than that. This young man was pleading for his life. And these thugs, and I call them thugs, and despite what some stupid football player says, thug is not a racial word. It's a word for a person who is a sociopath, who's willing to accomplish whatever damage he feels is appropriate for whatever purposes this is a sociopath and a thug are synonymous because they are without empathy. And there's no way that for 15 minutes you could have seen this young man lying on the ground, blood pouring from his body and his face, and not have felt empathy. There is no way that you could have heard those pleas and those cries and not have felt empathy, unless you were an empty shell of a human being, a sociopathic, and in the case of 2 of these officers, psychopathic murderer. I'm so incensed, and when I watched that video, the tears just poured down my face as I imagined myself sitting there as a father, knowing that, or imagining what that would have been like for the father of Kelly Thomas, to watch that, knowing that was his son there, pleading, Daddy, help me. They're killing me. I got to tell you, people, if this is the society that we're willing to accept, all is lost for us. All. Okay. What I wanted to talk about in this instance was this issue of Iran, nuclear weapons, and the Obamacare legacy. You know, the Iranians have come out and said that they did not agree to dismantle anything relating to the nuclear deal that these people are all claiming they have. And the truth of the matter is, I believe they're right. There's discussion about some secret deal that to this moment we cannot clarify, quantify, or get an explanation from the administration on. The foreign minister from Iran insists that the Obama administration is mischaracterizing the concessions that they've made to Iran on this 6-month nuclear deal. In this deal, they have agreed to allow Iran to have access to money which has been frozen for all intents and purposes, folks, since the days of the Shah and the Islamic takeover of Iran as a theocracy. They will allow them to sell oil, and they will allow them to continue to produce and manufacture nuclear materials. And when you look at the overall issues of this deal, Israel is terrified of it, and rightly so. They would, of course, be the primary first target, one would imagine. I mean, Iran has made it abundantly clear, repeatedly, that they do not believe that Israel has a reason or an excuse to exist. And whether you like or dislike Israel and the influence they have in the United States and in our political environment and our policies, nothing would justify a nuclear weapon being detonated to wipe out an entire race of people. When you look at the concessions that have been made, the lying that's going on to the American people from our own administration, who's trying to tell us that, this agreement is something that's actually not. And no one at this point in time should have the thought in their mind that, well, you can't make a statement like that the administration is lying. What makes you think you can say that the administration is misrepresenting the truth? Well, with all due respect, folks, we don't need any further proof that this administration lies to us, other than what we have directly in front of us by their own admission during the Obamacare debacle, during Fast and Furious, during the IRS scandal. I mean, at this point, it's really not an open question as to whether or not this administration has a pathological problem with telling the truth. And so when I look at an Iranian deal and I think to myself, was it possible that they would misrepresent the truth on that to us? I would say it's not only possible, it's not only probable, it's virtually guaranteed. And my concern is that President Barack Obama and John Kerry are two people who have egos the size of Georgia, that they are both playing a political game where we as the pawns are merely construed to be, collateral, if you will. And they're so desperate to have their names go down in the history books with a quote-unquote legacy. When I hear that word used in conjunction with a politician, it always makes my blood boil. And it does, because this is, and never should be, about the legacy of a politician. If you've become a politician for the purposes of legacy, or you're so self-absorbed that you feel your legacy overrides your need to produce and defend the nation that you've sworn an oath to, then with all due respect, I summarily dismiss you as an individual out of hand. I decry that you are not an American, that you are a traitor to your own nation. If you're willing to cut a deal with a foreign government who's a sworn enemy and mischaracterize the concessions that you're making to the American people in an effort to get them to accept it at the cost of their own demise, that, ladies and gentlemen, is the height of treason and hubris. I got to tell you, this foreign minister, Zarif, has told CNN's chief national security correspondent that terminology used by the White House to describe the agreement is different from the text, the written text that was agreed to by Iran and the other countries in the talks. And they include United States, Britain, France, Russia, China, and Germany. Quote, the White House version both underplays the concessions and overplays Iranian commitments, end quote, under the agreement that took effect on Monday. Now, I got to tell you, this whole issue of Iran gaining access to a nuclear weapon should be a serious and deep cause of concern for everyone, globally, not just the United States. Iran has long been a promoter of terrorism. They fund it. We know that they are willing to assist on a national and state actor level in the distribution of weaponry, funding money, of course, and training for jihadist Islamic groups. We know that those groups consider the United States among a long list of enemies that they seek to control, dominate, and ultimately put underneath their control with the implementation of a global Islamic caliphate, the implementation of Sharia law. We see them actively working towards it. We also know that many of these individuals and groups would not be adverse or unwilling to use a nuclear weapon were they to have or be able to gain access to one. That's one of the reasons, ladies and gentlemen, why we as a nation work so hard to cultivate relationships with countries like India and Pakistan. Because Pakistan holds nuclear weapons. If those ever fell into an Islamic theocratic government's hands, and they were, of malicious intent, where would that leave us? I mean, we would have our, and they have the capability to not just produce a weapon, but also, launch it and to perhaps even miniaturize it and make it, transportable. My concern here is that what we see is another example of Obama and Kerry, who will stop at nothing to accomplish a legacy that ultimately places every citizen in the world in danger of their very lives. Because once a nuclear confrontation starts, there's no denying that it will continue. Now, there are those who really, truly believe that there is a conspiratorial intent to accomplish such a thing, such a heinous crime against humanity. And, without getting into the veracity of those arguments, and they do have some plausible, arguments to put forth in that regard. We have to be mindful of the fact that this agreement doesn't really do anything to prohibit Iran from gaining nuclear capabilities. What it does do is it slows them down for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But it only slows them down superficially and peripherally. I mean, they've come out and said that they can undo what's been put forth in this agreement literally within 24 hours in the event that the agreement were to come apart or fail, or any member of the agreement violated the terms of it. So what's the security that we have in an agreement that can, for all intents and purposes, be replaced in a matter of 24 hours by an administration which has clearly shown us that it has, no concern whatsoever for life, property, dignity, law? I mean, to me, it's insane to think that we should be willing to allow John Kerry and Barack Obama to negotiate anything on our behalf, because they have shown themselves to be willing to place our nation into exigent danger on a national security face, on a domestic front. I mean, this isn't an issue of no confidence, ladies and gentlemen. This is a question of whether or not we're allowing our enemy to negotiate on our behalf on something as serious as nuclear weapons. Personally, I wouldn't let President Barack Obama negotiate a speeding ticket for me. Nor would I allow John Kerry. I mean, I don't think those guys have the integrity and the honor to do anything in a fair and objective manner. I think they have long ago sold their souls to the devil. And I gotta believe that most Americans at this stage in the game maybe don't recognize it, but it doesn't change the reality that is the case. I mean, when you look at what they've done over the past number of years to us as a nation, and I say to us, not, I mean, the situation that we're looking at right now and that we've been looking at with relation to the Fast and Furious scandal, the IRS scandal. I mean, this is a nation that's declared war against its own people. Why would we allow him to negotiate a nuclear agreement with another stated foreign enemy? I'm beginning to wonder whose side Barack Obama and John Kerry are really on. Aren't you? I mean, the truth is, these are dangerous men. And allowing them to negotiate on our behalf something as crucial as an agreement between Iran and the rest of the world on a nuclear deterrent basis, in my opinion, is the height of insanity. It really is. It is the height of insanity. These men, both Barack Obama and John Kerry, and there are many, many, many others in this administration that I could name, but these two in particular are a clear and exigent threat to the safety and the security and the continued peace in the United States of America. And I really, truly do not believe that we can continue to allow them to negotiate anything on our behalf. Their removal would only be the first of a series of steps, but it would be the beginning of the swing of the pendulum. That's why I support any and every effort to remove them from office, whether that be under a General Vallely's concept of a no confidence vote, whether that be the articles of impeachment, whether that be a literal charge of crimes against humanity, crimes against the nation, of treason for aiding and abetting the enemy. And I think there's significant levels of evidence out there that would back up and substantiate such a charge. I'm not willing to place the future of 7.5 billion people in the hands of people like Barack Hussein Obama, John Kerry, nor the minister of Iran. They're megalomaniacs, every last one of them. And they're bringing this world, this entire planet, to a point of crisis. And it's not a crisis where, we might lose our life savings, or we might lose our homes, or find ourselves, destitute. I'm talking about a crisis where we may see the end of civilization. Okay, you've been listening to America's Voice Now. Please make sure that you support all of our sponsors. If you're interested in the development of a new website, please visit airbridgeweb.com. Airbridge is it's a company that I actually am a partner in. We do very, very extensive web development, whether it's e-commerce or just a small informational website. We can show you literally dozens of examples of all different variations. If you're interested in that, you can go to visit airbridgeweb.com. Air like you breathe, bridge like you drive over, web like the internet. And I would encourage you to contact me. You can simply send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org and say, in the subject line, web development, and I'll get what that means. I'll be more than happy to either get back to you myself or have one of our web developers get back to you with to understand exactly what you're looking for and what you need. Make sure that you visit our friends over at the battery station. Kevin is a great friend of ours and a friend of mine on a personal level. And he and his team over there do a great job providing folks with all manner of things for self-reliant living. And if you have a corporation and you need batteries and flashlights and those types of things, Kevin's got everything you could ever dream about. You can reach him by going to batterystation.com. You can also call him at 417-257-7799. If you're on the square in West Plains, please make sure that you visit the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, where you can get all kinds of accessories and accoutrements as well as the tobacco products themselves. You can find them by going to their Facebook page at facebook.com/Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. And you can reach them at 417-257-1776. You can also, while you're there, visit Wits End Classic Barbershop, where you can get a great shave and a haircut. And a haircut is still only $10, folks. And he does a phenomenal job. He cuts my hair about once a week. Jason Whittingham is the purveyor there. And you can also find his site on facebook.com/Wits End, and it's WHITTS, Wits End Classic Barbershop. While you're here in town, visit our friends over at Pizza Hut, where you can have a great lunch special of a salad bar and pizza and pasta. And that's open and available to you from 11 to 2 every day. And then in addition to that, on Tuesday evenings, it's family night, and kids under 12 eat free. So make sure that you swing by Pizza Hut. And when you see any of our sponsors, please make sure that you mention to them how much you appreciate the fact that they have been supporters of America's Voice Now, because that's what keeps us on the air to help us share with you. You can learn more about us by finding us at americasvoicenow.org. You can also go to Patriot FB, like Patriot Foxtrot Bravo, and join up there. It's a patriotic Facebook group, and we stream there every day along with some other great radio programs. The family over at Patriot FB is excellent, including J.J. McCartney with his Conservative Junction Radio and the Midnight Patriot with Jeff Norton. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to America's Voice Now.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. You're joining us in our third segment. We're halfway through our Thursday morning. And I got a couple of texts and questions about whether or not I was planning on trying to go up to Kirkwood, Missouri last night for the hearing on the Ozark Riverways, which I covered in a previous segment. And I apologize to those who were looking forward to my being there and speaking. I had some personal problems that prevented me from getting up there. It's a 3.5, almost a 4-hour ride for me each way. And I just had some personal issues that prevented me from getting up there that occurred yesterday afternoon. And there was no way I was going to be able to make it in time for the event. So forgive me for not being able to get there. I am looking for and working with some folks that were there in attendance last night to try to get you an update, and maybe we can do that tomorrow and kind of fill you in on how many people attended and so forth and so on, because this is an important issue for Missouri. And I think it's an important issue for the nation in the sense that we need to feel some successes as we push back against federal overreach. And this is one perfect example of it. We've defeated these people before. We defeated the Department of the Interior when we fought against them on the Blueways, and even prior to that, under the Man on the Biosphere and all these other programs. They just keep bringing the same nonsense back. They changed the name, that's all. And all of it is meant for complete control. When I did go to that meeting the other day in Van Buren, the one word that constantly cropped up in every presentation that they made was the word restriction on access. I mean, who are these people to tell us we can't utilize a river right in our own backyard because they're in control of it? I've had enough of it. And, you know, this whole meeting in Kirkwood last night was a false game to try to enlist assistance from these extreme environmentalist groups who support the endeavor. And, you know, with all due respect, most of them in Kirkwood either have never been here, or if they have been here to travel on these rivers and maybe float down at one, you know, on a weekend or something like that. I mean, who are they to make a determination that affects our access to a river 3.5 hours from where they live? I mean, you know, I'm 2 hours from Springfield. Springfield doesn't come to West Plains and say, hey, we're considering paving a new road over here. We'd like your input on it. They don't. I can tell you why the National Park Service is holding their meeting in Kirkwood, because that is the home of these conservancy and environmentalist extremist groups, and they knew that they could get a solid base and core of individuals to attend and support their position. With all due respect, that's not public input. That's called loading the dice. And if you tried to do that in Vegas, they'd toss you out on your ear and ban you for life from ever coming back. But politicians these days, folks, there is no such thing as a straight and true, you know, up or down vote or input from the people. None of that. It's all about manipulation and control. So we'll see what happens, or what happened last night. I'll get the information and the inside scoop. I do know that there were a number of politicians that were going to go up there who I actually have some trust in their evaluation of what went down, including Peter Kinder, Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder, who I know on a personal level, and I like him. I think he's a good guy. And so we're going to get you some sort of a report, and we'll update you tomorrow on it. What I do want to talk about in this segment is the continuation of the idea of a merger and a North American Union where the United States, Canada, and Mexico are integrated into a unified, singular political and economic entity. Now, this is all part of, a one world type governance scenario that when you tie it together with things like the TPP and the TTIP, where we're talking about the merger of political and economic interests in the United States with the European Union, and now, or even prior to the European Union, this idea of Mexico and Canada. This ought to alarm every American because of the simple fact that if we allow our government to subvert our own independent sovereignty as a nation and allow foreign governments and tribunals to rule the day on American companies, American interests, American law, American constitutional requirements and protections, we have lost our country completely, ladies and gentlemen. And no amount of soft revolution will save that. Now, I posted an article back up in 2011 about a release that WikiLeaks had done back in June of 2011. And they released a cable, a U.S. Embassy cable, from 2005 about, or by the, it was released by WikiLeaks, and it confirmed that the implementation of the North American scheme, if you will, was not only, it wasn't a pipe dream, it wasn't a unicorn fantasy, it was in fact being worked on. And we see it in an announcement that was made yesterday where Obama has the EPA funding with taxpayer dollars schemes in Mexico that achieve small steps towards this integration. It's called Border 2020 in the United States and Frontera 2020 on the Mexican side. Now, this is an article in the New American, and as I normally do, if you're catching this on YouTube, all of these articles will be attached in the comment in the subject section. But so you can read them yourself, because I don't want you to take my word for anything. I just want you to use me as a launching place to gather information and then go out and do your own due diligence and homework. But in this integration scheme that's being pursued by Mexican and Canadian authorities in conjunction with almost every administrative agency that exists under the Obama administration's federal bureaucracy, the EPA has announced a $230,000 series of 2 grants that are being issued to 2 cities in Mexico. Now, I already hear the naysayers out there. Well, what the heck is $230,000? What are you talking about? That's not a big deal. Well, first of all, we shouldn't be granting money to a foreign country at all, for any reason whatsoever. Secondly, what is the EPA doing granting money to a foreign government? The EPA is one of the most extra-constitutional agencies in existence. But the issue here of this grants is being issued to 2 cities in Mexico. It's being done under this banner of a binational program tied to NAFTA, known as Border 2020 or Frontera 2020. The latest scheme, while it's small, granted, shows that there are components still being pushed forward to achieve this North American Union integration. This stuff has been documented extensively, by the way, not only on my site, but also by the New American. And the end goal is to merge the United States into these regional and global systems of governance. So when we talk about that, we're talking about the idea that, as an example, under the TPP and the TTIP, the United States would be co-joined both politically and economically, and utilizing environmental issues as one of the overarching umbrellas and all the rest of this nonsense, with the European Union on the across the pond. In the meantime, they're working on the idea of conjoining the United States with Canada and Mexico, both on a political as well as governmental level, to co-join the three nations into one new governance entity. Ladies and gentlemen, what would possess us to want to merge with Canada, which has a governmental system which is clearly socialist in its leanings, not even leanings, in its implementation, and worse yet, a failed narco state like Mexico? I mean, if Mexico was so desirable, why are they pouring over our border by the millions to get out? Why would we want to take on the headache of a failed narco state that is run, for all intents and purposes, by the cartels down there, which has never, in recent, and not recent, in the history of the United States, never truly been any sort of a republican form of government, has always been either a dictatorship or some quasi-socialist or some sort of military junta, or, Mexico has never had a stable government, not in the entire history of the United States. It's either been, ruled as a quasi-monarchy or a dictatorship or a socialist, narco slash, I don't know what you want to call it, but I mean, ladies and gentlemen, on the North American continent, Mexico is the worst country that we could think of to say, let's co-join ourselves with them. Because who's going to be responsible for fixing all their problems? Who's going to be responsible for bringing those narco terrorists to heel in the cartels? You just hit on it right there, ladies and gentlemen. You see, the idea that the United States of America could get in there and foster the implementation of an endless war against drugs has these people in government and in the military-industrial complex salivating over power and money. And if you think I'm dreaming about that, I invite you to take a serious but objective view and look at the information that's out there. The real true implication of this is, on a global level, to have unified global governance, where no country has sovereignty and no borders exist. And that's everything that America stands against. On a more practical day in and day out level, you've got a scenario where these people are desirous of maintaining and expanding their power base and having unlimited access to funding and resources. And you're looking at corporations that can continue the principles of a corporatocracy that buys and sells our government and our legislative arm to empower them to gain more profits, to create monopolistic entities that, are sole source providers for trillions of dollars worth of weaponry. And don't you get it? I mean, agencies like the DEA and the CIA and the NSA are wetting their pants in anticipation of something like a merger of the United States and Mexico. They can't wait. And frankly, anything they want, I don't. They've already shown me everything that I need to know about their intentions, about their honor, about their integrity, about their true desire to protect and defend this nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. How do I say that? Well, they treat us like the enemy. And that tells us all we need to know, folks. I don't care how fancy their words. I don't care how glamorous their rhetoric. I don't care how much justification and rationale they can throw at us about keeping us safe. I only look at their actions because their words are empty, hollow shells. They're meaningless. What does matter is how they behave. And they are willing to subjugate the American people for personal growth, success, financial improvement, self-aggrandization. I don't know. I don't even care. Because I don't think in that psychopathic manner that I'm Machiavellian enough in my machinations to say, it doesn't matter, the ends justify the means as long as I get mine. I can't think that way. My mind doesn't work that way. And the truth of the matter is, if you're listening to this broadcast, yours doesn't either. The real problem here is that people that think that way and people who think our way will probably never see eye to eye. It's the same problem that we have as a nation and as a government when we try to understand and identify the issue of the threat of the Eastern Islamic threat. We don't understand their culture one iota, and we're never gonna. We don't get their mindset. We don't understand how they think or why they think that way. They can't convince us of the veracity of their positioning, and we can't convince them of the veracity of ours. And it's like two ships that will never meet. They'll always just pass in the night. And on a completely, separate plane, we as human beings and we as Americans, we have a fundamental difference of thinking from the psychopaths who are running our country. We're never going to think like they think. I can't think like a mass murderer. I can't even make myself think like a psychopathic, megalomaniac mass murderer. And mark my words, ladies and gentlemen, this is some strong language. But these people who are in charge of our nation right now are mass murderers. Do you hear what I just said? And I meant it in exactly the phrase and the sentence and the tone and the tenor and the intent. They are mass murderers. They are plotting the demise of you and your family right now. You are collateral. You are a crop, livestock, to be bought and sold and traded to accomplish their agenda. And when your usefulness has reached its end, they have absolutely no problem culling you from the herd. Why would I want these people to negotiate anything on my behalf? The TPP, a nuclear deal with Iran, the TTIP? I mean, if it's really in my best interest, why is my own government keeping secret from the Congress that allegedly represents me the terms and the conditions of a treaty which will affect every aspect of life in the United States, all the sovereignty of our nation, all of our economic development, all of our production and means and our gross domestic product, the lifestyle, the life size, the life expectancy of every American. But under Barack Obama, the Muslim caliphate dictator running the United States right now, they're doing this in secret for 5 years, folks. Now, the Nature Conservancy and the Audubon Society and these extremist environmental groups, they're all party to the negotiations. The megalithic industry titans of Google and IBM and Microsoft, they're all part of the negotiations. But they're sworn to secrecy not to reveal the terms and the conditions of these agreements, TPP and TTIP, not to mention NAFTA, CAFTA, and every other one, from being revealed to Congress, who's actually got a vote to implement it on you. Tell me how that makes any justifiable sense at all. Tell me how you can say, at knowing that any of these people have your best interest at heart in even the slightest, remotest concept. We're run by a nation of psychopaths. We're run by a nation run by leadership of psychopaths. And I think it's time we acknowledged it. I think it's time that we acknowledged we've got a whole group of Hitler, Pol Pot, Stalinist, Marxist, mousy tongue monsters who are sitting as the titular heads of industry, government, banking. I mean, what the heck is going on here, people? Why are we so afraid to acknowledge the truth? Yeah, the union's on track to proceed, people. Not only the Union of the United States and Mexico and Canada, but the Union of the European Union. And now Obama's been talking to China about inviting them into the TPP. If that doesn't scare the pants off of you, nothing will. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the security of the Obamacare website and how dangerously laughable that is to you and your family. It's beyond laughable, folks. But if we don't laugh about it, we're going to have to go to war over it. I mean, this is just absolutely insane. Make sure that you visit our sponsors, the law offices of Jason Henry at number 10 Court Square, 417-256-4100, state and federal criminal cases, as well as family law and civil issues. Make sure that you visit our friends over at Battery Station at 417-257-7799. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com. Our friends at Pizza Hut, where you can get yourself a great lunch every day. They have an excellent lunch buffet that's held every day, and Tuesday night is family night where kids eat free under 12. Make sure that you visit our friends over at the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop on the square in West Plains, 417-257-1776. And you can find them on Facebook at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. So it's facebook.com/Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. While you're there, visit our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop. Get your hair cut. You can find them on Facebook at facebook.com/Wits End Classic Barbershop. You can also visit airbridgeweb.com, airbridgeweb.com, for all of your internet needs, whether that be the development of a website, search engine optimization for your existing site, or whether you're looking for e-learning capabilities to educate and or train individuals within your industry. Airbridge Web is a company which I'm a partner of, for full disclosure, and by all means, we'd certainly love to have your business and be able to assist you in any way that we can in your efforts. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Please stick with us. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the non-existent security on Obamacare. You can find us at americasvoicenow.org. All right. Hey, I want to thank a friend who was gracious enough to, equipment is always a hard thing for us to come by because, as you know, America's Voice Now operates exclusively on donations from listeners. And I got an email from a fella who's a listener out in California, and he asked me if I'd be interested in having access to a microphone that I'm using right now. And this is, in the audio world, this particular company, it's a company by the name of Neumann. It's spelled like Newman, but it's pronounced Neumann. They are the holy grail, if you will, of producers of microphones. And I when he told me about it and he asked me if I'd be willing to, or if I'd like to utilize it, and it's not a gift, but it's a loan. It's a very, very, very expensive microphone. But I think if you've been listening for the past couple of days, we've been using it. And the representation that and the resonance that it can provide and the quality of the sound that you get out of it is extraordinary. So without giving out your name, and you know who you are, I am extraordinarily grateful, pleased, and excited to have the opportunity to use this equipment. Thank you so much. If you'd like to support us, folks, we operate exclusively on donations. We don't sell anything. I don't have books out there. I don't pitch, some kind of magical cream that, melts the warts off your nose in 13 seconds or less. Why? Because I don't want to pollute our message. We do need sponsors to help cover the costs of radio airtime and things like that. But, I don't want to be in a position where I'm beholden to turn a profit on America's Voice Now. Because once we go there, then we no longer have objectivity, right? In other words, now we're more interested in gathering more numbers so we can drive more revenue. And that's not what this is about. It's not what it's ever been about. I've never received a penny of pay for years and years of doing this. And we do need your help. If there is any way that you can help us, there's two different ways that you can participate and help us financially. And if you've got access to equipment, we're trying to build a television studio. If you've got access to equipment, I'd be grateful if you had cameras. We need lighting. We need money. We need all of it. I mean, this is a mammoth project for us to put on, and I fund all this out of my pocket, and I just limits to where I can go. So if you can help us financially, you can do so by going to americasvoicenow.org. On there, we have a link where you can simply click it and either make a monthly commitment that some status of dollars will be taken through a PayPal program and deposited to us, or you can mail some funds to us. I'm going to give you our P.O. box address where you can mail a check if that's the way that you would prefer to handle it. If you don't want to use a credit card online and all that, I get it. If you can make a one-time donation, if you can make us a regular gift, in your monthly expenditures, you have no idea how grateful we'd be. So the way to do that is you can go to americasvoicenow.org and you can simply, make a donation through the PayPal system there, and you can either do it one time or as a consistent monthly pledge. The alternative, of course, would be for you to send us a check or a money order or whatever form that takes, and you can do that by sending it to America's Voice Now, and that's P.O. Box 1195, P.O. Box 1195. And that's located in West Plains, Missouri. West Plains is 2 words, and our zip code here is 65775. So again, that's America's Voice Now, P.O. Box 1195, West Plains, Missouri, 65775. And I can tell you that, we're grateful for every penny. I see folks that come up to me once in a while at a place and give me a $10 handshake. And, man, I got to tell you, there's times I know that that's probably one of only 2 10s in their pocket. You have no idea how humbling that is. You really don't until you experience it yourself. And I don't reject it because I know that it's from their heart and I don't want to insult them. Oh, that's touching. I know some people, and I know their situation, and for them to, hand me a $5 or a $10 or a $20 bill, and I know how much that money means to them. That's a validation of everything that we do here. So, okay, there's an article out about a guy who went out and broke the security of Obamacare's healthcare.gov. This is a cybersecurity expert who basically, and I've talked about him before, his job is to go out and go to websites that companies build and try to hack into them so that they know if there's a security hole. His job is to be, a pretend burglar, right? See if he can figure out a way to get past the security. His name is David Kennedy, and I've spoken about him before and talked about him before. Basically, the other day, he went out there and he, within 4 minutes, was able to gain access through a regular browser. No special tools. All he did was open up a browser window, go in, and utilize skills and known methodologies to hack into this website. And within 4 minutes, he was able to gain access to 70,000 contacts. He says, there's a technique we call passive reconnaissance, which allows us to query and look at how the website operates and performs. These types of attacks that I'm mentioning here, in the 70,000 that you're referencing, is very easy to do. It's a rudimentary type attack that doesn't actually attack the website itself. It simply extracts information from it without actually having to go into the system. Think of it this way. Think of something where you have a car and the car doors are open and the windows are open and you can see inside of it. That's basically what they allow you to do. And there's no sophistication level here. It's just really wide open. 70,000 was just one of the numbers that I was able to go up to. And I stopped after that. I'm sure it's hundreds of thousands, if not more. And it was done within a 4-minute time frame. Now, Kennedy has actually testified before Congress in I think, 2 different congressional committees. And, guys, within 4 minutes, he was able to gain access to the complete records of 70,000 people. If you don't think for a minute that other people, like the people who just pulled off the hack of Target and Neiman Marcus, are interested in all of the personal information that you've put into that system, you're sadly mistaken. Because when you register on Obamacare, you're putting in your name, your address, your social security number, your age, your date of birth, your home address, your telephone numbers, and your credit card information, because you have to pay. The gift that our government is giving to identity thieves and fraudsters, and enforcing the implementation of that gift by a legal methodology to require you to go through this system, is not only malfeasance, it's criminal malfeasance. If that's not bad enough for you, the government who's collecting all of that information is going to use it against you. How do I make such a definitive declaratory statement? Well, I'm here to remind you, and if you're a new-time listener to America's Voice, you may not have heard this, but I've talked about it before. When you go to Obamacare and the healthcare.gov website, the security warning, first of all, they hid it. And in the privacy section, it says, and it says empirically now, and it's been discovered, so now it's open, but it says that the information that you submit can be used for the purposes of auditing, investigation, and prosecution. So, basically, your Fourth Amendment right to be secure in your person and home and effects and privacy in your information has been eviscerated by a law that was passed in 2010. And your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination is being violated Now remember, the Fourth and the Fifth Amendments were outlined for us and put into writing so that everybody had a solid grasp on the content and the intent of those rights, which precede the Constitution itself. Remember, these are not rights that the Constitution or any government gives us. These are given to us by our Creator. All the Constitution did was point them out in writing. And yet, this administration and our government and prior administrations, this is not an Obama diatribe, they are violating that by passing a law in 2010 which eviscerates your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights, which pre-exist which preceded all human history. I mean, I don't think I can get further back than that. How dare these people have the hubris to pass a law which they say eviscerates rights which precede humankind, and then leave you unprotected and wide open to fraud and abuse. Not only by them, which you can bet is part of the program, but by independent entities who seek to utilize that information to steal from you. There was an article on Drudge today about the hack that was done to Target. They caught a couple of Mexican nationals on the border, I think it was yesterday, that had credit card information from thousands of people in their possession from the Target store hack. When we're talking about that level of access to information, I mean, Target is providing you, if you shopped at Target, with credit protection services as a part of their settlement for your personal information being stolen. Well, in the case of your government, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to be the first one to tell you, if you're not aware of it already, that the federal government has removed the limitations and the requirements that in the event they're hacked, they have to notify you. Now, there are laws in place that said when Neiman Marcus and Target were hacked, they were required by law to notify the victims. Yet the federal government has seen, in its infinite betrayal, to alleviate that same requirement against itself. So even if right now the federal government is hacked and Obamacare is hacked, they're not required by law to notify you. There are no procedures in place to notify you. And the only way you're going to find out about it is when you go and pull your credit report and you find out there's a mortgage in your name that you didn't even know existed. The purpose of government is to protect and defend, foremost, the rights, the lives, the property of its citizens. And this government has shown itself to be an enemy of the people in this regard. Not only this regard, but this is the topic we're talking of. The United States of America has an enemy in our midst. It is Washington, D.C. It is thousands of administrative agencies who have no constitutional authority to exist, who are outside of the legal permissions and grants of power, the power of attorney, the legal power of attorney that we the people gave first and foremost to the states, and then secondarily the states in turn subdelegated to the federal government. But under no circumstances did we, the American people, give Congress a power of attorney that said anywhere in there that they had the right to then in turn subdelegate that authority to unelected and unaccountable bureaucrats in a vast sea of treasonous agencies who choose to subjugate us to continue the existence and the life of that agency as their primary focus and objective. You know, when I was at the meeting the other day in Van Buren, I went up to one of these guys from the National Park Service. Now, just to show you how important they thought this meeting was, they flew 5 people in from different areas of the country, Colorado and Omaha and other places. And the presence of law enforcement there was so strong, you'd have thought we were like a dangerous crew that were going there to meet. Armed security in both local police, state police. I mean, it was county sheriffs, and even some of the National Park Service people were armed. I mean, it was like, you'd have thought that they were expecting some kind of a gang confrontation. But more importantly, I went up to one of the individuals and I asked him if, as a part of his job function, as part of the National Park Service, if he takes an oath of office. He's a planner. He helped write the 535-page, disaster that's their plan. And you know what he said to me? No, we don't take an oath. And I said, I know you don't. Now, here's what I want you to understand and recognize. They have no oath to uphold and defend your rights delegated and outlined and enumerated in the Bill of Rights. Think about that for a moment. Here's an agency, and by the way, none of these agencies have an obligation to take an oath. A couple of the law enforcement ones do, but the rest of them don't. And these individuals are making law, which they call rules and regulations, but aren't. And this includes Obamacare and the entire HHS and all of these other groups. EPA. These individuals work for an agency that does not have as their predominant foundation, their lodestone, their touchstone, an oath. An oath of protection for the people that are subjected to their decisions. An oath of protection for the principles of the Constitution. An oath of protection for the country, for the nation, for our society, for individuals, for our states, for our rules and our way of life and our foundational ideas and principles and concepts. There is no oath. And so I would couch it to you this way. You could have horses in a corral, and irrespective of how wild those horses want to be, they're limited in the scope of where they can go. Take that away, and these horses can run free. And when you have administrative agencies that have no boundaries, that have no fences, that have no limitations on them, in the form of an oath, what's to hold them accountable? What's to make them what's to make them honorable? What's to make them have integrity and to express that in everything they do? Nothing. Nothing. There is no integrity. There is no honor. There is no representation of the people, because they don't represent you and they haven't taken an oath to do so. They are, in fact, your enemy because they view you as their enemy. Not an enemy you chose, Not an enemy by your choice. In fact, most of you don't even know they exist as an enemy until they attack you. And then it's too late. The truth is, the HHS, the Obamacare Foundational Organization, all of these agencies, whether they be, irrespective of what their function is, there's only two that are constitutionally authorized, folks: Commerce and Border Patrol. They're the only two that have a constitutional justification for their existence. And yet, we have a stack of, 30,000 pieces of paper that make up the Federal Register of rules and regulations that parade about as law, passed by individuals who are unelected, unaccountable, unsworn. And your rights to a jury trial have been eviscerated. Your ability, you don't get a jury trial when you go to an administrative hearing. You're heard by a judge, whatever he rules, that's final. In many cases, there's not even a right to appeal. If you want to classify that as justice, I don't know how you can do that. Okay, we're going to wrap for the day. I think I've made my point. I think our nation is in such grave danger that if we don't, all of us, work and do everything in our power to arise and be counted, to be fearless, to be fierce, to be courageous, and to speak out, even when our voice shakes and quakes with fear, even when we tremble with fear, that we will wake up in short order in a nation which isn't ours, as slaves to a government that seeks to utilize us as a human resource, not as its masters. Please make sure you support our sponsors. Patronize them. They keep us on the air. Battery Station, 417-257-7799, batterystation.com. Friends at Pizza Hut, you can visit any Pizza Hut, but the one I want you to go to is right here in West Plains on Porter Wagoner Boulevard, and go up to Bruce and say, Bruce, thanks for supporting America's Voice Now. Lunch and dinner. Jason Henry over at the law offices of Jason Henry, number 10 Court Square, 417-256-4100. State and federal cases for criminal, family law, custody issues, as well as personal injury related to automobile issues. Our friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop, you can find them on the square in West Plains at 417-257-1776, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Patriot Cigar and Tobacco. Also, our friends at Wits End Classic Barbershop, where you can get the best haircut you'll ever find for $10. And Jason Whittingham is the owner there. You can find them on the square in West Plains, and you can also visit their Facebook page at facebook.com/Wits End Classic Barbershop. Also, make sure that you see our friends over at Airbridge Web if you're interested in any kind of web development, search engine optimization for your existing website, or if you're looking to combine the two, and or any kind of e-learning project or collateral created for brochures, business cards, and the like. That's in full disclosure, that's a company I own, or I'm a partner in. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Find us at americasvoicenow.org. And by all means, please visit us at facebook.com/America's Voice Now, patriotfb.com, where you can catch our show streaming every day, and youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Please share our broadcast with your friends and your circle of influence. We'll see you tomorrow.